For session 9, we'll turn our attention to the topic of British hymnody, that first generation of hymn writers. And that's going to be a little bit hard to trace. We have to go back before that first generation because, of course, Isaac Watts is the father of British hymnody. Before we get into that, let's have a little fun looking at some great hymns. Here's one that Isaac Watts really wrote. Blessed is the man whose bowels move. I think that's something worth singing about on Sunday morning. And since this is in long meter, let's just go ahead and use Old 100th as our tune. Blessed is the man whose bowels move and melt with pity to the poor, whose soul by sympathizing love feels what his fellow saints endure. His heart contrives for their relief more good than his own hands can do. He, in the time of general grief, shall find the Lord has bowels too. Oh, he's talking about the seat of emotions here, sort of a King James way of thinking. Oh, that was awkward. Anyway, here's another hymn from that first generation, Joseph Hart. I'm a big fan of Joseph Hart and his lyrics. Come, ye sinners, poor and needy.
Sinners Jesus came to call. Not the righteous, not the righteous. Sinners Jesus came to call.
Now, we are faced with a bit of an editorial challenge here because we're referring to people as sinners. You know, like what do we do with that? Come you... can we just avoid the word sinners as the third word of the first line? Maybe say, I don't know, we've already said needy and weary, and later maybe we could replace some of those. Come ye people whose behavior seems less than perfect or inappropriate. Don't know. That's the awkward thing for today's churches, but powerful hymn. Well, let's go back to the early evolution of the English hymn. Before there was Isaac Watts, before there was Joseph Hart, what did we have? Well, for one thing, we had English carols, which just meant a song that you would dance to, and it would often have a Latin refrain to it, or perhaps vocables like fa la la. That would be called a carol. We pretty much still use that word with regard to Christmas, but carols didn't just have to do with Christmas. Anyway, that was some early evolution of the English hymn. There were some translations of Latin hymns because this was the Anglican Church, and it was still up till the 1500s, strongly Roman Catholic in England. Early on in the Reformation, some German chorales made it over to England, and it could well have been that the German concept, at least musically, of the Reformation was going to take over in England. Miles Coverdale put together ghostly psalms and spiritual songs drawn out of the Holy Scripture. And these were very much like German chorales. They had that feel. On the other hand, pretty early on as well, in that first generation of reformers, metrical psalms also made it, not just in French, but they were translated into English. First, there was Sternhold and Hopkins. That was the old version. Now, of course, they didn't call it the old version until the end of the 1600s when Tate and Brady came out with the new version. Then you refer to Sternhold and Hopkins as the old version. The thing about the old version was it was first, right? And people get used to it. They memorize it that way and so forth. So a new version comes out, and objectively speaking, maybe it's better poetry. Objectively speaking, maybe it's even a more accurate translation, but it's not what we're used to. It's like changing Christmas carols. We're so used to that. Well, this is fairly significant for people in the United States because English hymnody, whatever was happening in England, is what came across to America as well. And so the Pilgrims were very strongly Calvinists and rather conservative in their views, and so they were still singing basically Sternhold and Hopkins, the old version, when they republished it as the Bay Psalm book, first book published in America.